Welcome to the Real Triathlon Podcast. I'm your host, Garrick Lowen, here with Nicholas Chase and Jackson Laundry.
Welcome back to the Real Triathlon Podcast. The boys are back. I promise we did not just have a political discussion. But I think Jack and I are both in off season. Jack just came back you just got back from the island, eh?
Yeah, yesterday morning.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
So I had a good old week vacation and now have a week of trying to work on non-training things, get contracts settled, accounting, all the bullshit planning that you wish that somebody else could just planning, Cozumel camp, everything. But I got to get done and then back to work. So Garrick, I want to hear about, your decision to go into the off season early. Stuff was just a little overwhelming, personal stuff, work stuff. Give us the details.
Fucked it, bud.
Did
now
you get
don't get to have
what
any allies.
Yeah, it was a really emotional decision. No, actually, so what happened was our technician at work, she decided to break her foot on the last weekend. It's completely her fault because she's about 5 feet tall and she decided she's going to go into a mosh pit. And someone stepped on her foot and broke it.
Garrett,
and so
it doesn't matter how tall you are, someone can step on your foot.
It's true, but your bones are brittle when you're that small.
Are you just trying?
Oh boy.
I think you're
I'm
about
not
to get
mad.
canceled.
No, I'm not mad at her at all. It was just like a fluke thing. She was out. Someone stepped. She was actually at a concert. It wasn't even a mosh pit or anything. Someone literally just backed up and stepped on her foot.
It was one of those Rush concerts when all those Canadians get crazy at.
Yeah, it was. Dude, I forget now. Who's the guy on Family Guy? They always do the cut too.
Seth
Canadian.
No, Seth MacFarlane.
No, he's the writer.
Oh.
Anyways, I know it was. I don't know. She went to a concert, some local band. She was having a good time. Whatever, broke her foot, so it really sucks for her. So she's mostly out of commission. So, and at the same time,
wait, should we start a GoFundMe?
No.
Okay.
She went to the fracture clinic, and it needs to be 3 millimeters displaced to have a surgery, and it was like just barely under 3 millimeters displaced. And they're like, "Come back in 6 weeks and see what happens."
I love that I love the healthcare system there. It's not quite broken enough, so don't worry.
Yeah, and fracture clinic is run once a week from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. and it's first come, first serve. And if you don't get seen in that hour, well, you got to come back next week.
I'd have just gone home I would have been like, Garrick, would you jump on my foot a little bit more? I need 0.3 fracture.
Yeah. So she might break it. But anyways, at the same time, we're launching which is kind of ironic. We're launching a new software, like billing software and patient management software that will allow me to work more remotely so that I can travel and race a bit more.
But right now you can't.
Yeah, right now we can't. So long story short, I am not racing Cozumel. Unfortunately, I was actually getting super pumped. The day before, my dad was like, yeah, no, he asked me if it was possible for me not to race because of all the work. I was like out on a bike ride and I was so fired up. I was like, man, I'm gonna freaking go for it. And then he was like, is there any chance that you can not? And I was like, you know what, Dad, you've done so much for me. Yeah, I can take a couple weeks off here and work. So
you can get that Christmas bonus.
My whole life's a bonus.
Oh shit.
Just kidding.
Well, we'll miss you because
makes sense.
So that's gonna suck.
So you're gonna come to Ironman in Africa with Nick and I in March then?
South Africa.
Yeah, I was looking at Ironman New Zealand, but
similar.
Yeah,
South Africa's only half as far as New Zealand.
Basically. Well, it's a different direction.
And also,
well, yeah, but okay. I mean, it depends. It's a sphere, so whichever way you go, you'll get there eventually.
Is it? Is it a sphere? I thought it was flat.
Only problem. So South Africa, I don't know. There's maybe 2 time zones there, but it's 3:27 in the AM there. It's like 9 hours ahead.
Yeah, honestly,
it's only 7.
I'm not opposed to either. I just figured New Zealand would be less competitive.
Well, it's not a Pro Series
Maybe.
race, is it?
New Zealand isn't. South Africa is.
Yeah, so it'll be different. Probably lineup of
Yeah.
fellers.
So
Yeah, New Zealand will be cool. Would be cool. I think Joe Skipper's doing that one, but
yeah, but he'll be burnt out by then.
Yeah, he won't be. He's already been just Instagramming his life away.
But Nick, how has your training been going for Cozumel?
Kind of just started it a few days ago after taking a little bit of a hiatus there. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen right now. I'm just like, well, the body it trained for 6 hours yesterday, and today I ran 20 miles and felt pretty basic. Didn't feel like I could do anything worthwhile. But I think we'll just still go. The main reason I'm bummed you're not going, Garrick, is because bringing our 16-year-old boy, just him and me going, and the only thing that made Amy feel good about it was that Morgan was going to be there during the race to make sure he didn't get stolen or something. So there's that to handle now. Got that landmine to undefuse there.
I tried to I tried to move my flights so that I could show up on the Friday or something. But I couldn't figure the flights were absurd.
Oh, to be very honest, there's like no flights directly into Cozumel that make any sense. So normally you go from Vegas to Dallas or to Houston, and then you get a direct flight into Cozumel, and it's like no big deal. Maybe like $500-600 the most. Right now, I looked even a month ago, there's like only a couple flights into Cozumel. Even if I got a one-way ticket to Dallas and waited for that bastard, it was still $1,000 just to go from Dallas to Cozumel round trip. Like, I can't believe it. So I got to do the worst thing ever, in my opinion. Got to go to Cancun. Got to get a taxi.
No.
Got to take a ferry. It's like, I know that a lot of people do it. I just have sworn. I've been like, fuck that ferry. I'm never doing that. And then there's no way to do it. And also some other bullshit. And then I'll change the subject, is when I was looking at flights, even to Cancun, like I was like, all right, we'll go out of Salt Lake City because we're going to spend Thanksgiving in Salt Lake City afterwards. Guess how much it was to fly from Salt Lake City directly to Cancun? Wait, I'll tell you. It was about $980 for one ticket. And then I was like, all right, well, let's check Vegas. Vegas was like $400. But guess what it fucking connects through? Salt Lake City. So I have to drive an hour and a half to Vegas, fly from Vegas.
You can book it and then cancel the first flight, but not the second. You have to call them and be like, oh, I decided to drive there.
Do you think they'll let me do that?
I'm pretty sure they will. I've heard people do that before.
Maybe. Either way.
That's crazy though. It's half as much to book an extra ticket to take the same flight.
I'm sure that's I'm willing to bet Jack has done the flight into Cancun and the ferry to Cozumel.
Yes, I have.
How is it? Can you give me a heads up?
Well, during COVID, it was like the only way you could do it because there were barely any flights. So we all did it, I think, that year.
No, I still was able to fly in United. Yeah.
It's not great. Like, it is a pain in the ass, for sure. But it's not like that brutal. It adds a few hours.
Remember last year when Brett at camp, they sent his luggage to like Atlanta or something. So he had to go back and forth from the ferry terminal to the airport like twice in one day. He got home at like 9 p.m. and it was just gone all day.
Oh man.
All right, so Cozumel.
The direct flights to Cozumel seem to be less ideal than they were last year, because right now I looked for camp time and it was like $3,000. But to go to Cancun, it was like cheap direct, or to do a connecting flight to get to Cozumel wasn't that bad. So I'll probably do that because fuck that ferry.
I got a connecting flight too, but it's like $500. It's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it.
I don't know anything about the start list. I don't care. I'm just staying at the Westin. We're gonna have a good time. I'm getting there on Tuesday because that was even cheaper to stay longer and then have to pay more for the hotel. So we just did that. Works out.
So what did you
Yeah.
do for? Are you doing heat training? Is it
Not
hot enough
yet.
there to do heat training?
No, like the right when we got back, it was like 75, 80 degrees. And then the day after, it's been in like highs in the 50s now. Actually, no, it was 60 something today. But I'll do sauna and cold plunge stuff starting probably tomorrow. But
Oh, it's
I
too
learned anything
bad that
about heat prep.
you're showing up on Tuesday because I was supposed to show up on Monday and I was going to be there alone for like 3 days. And I was like, fuck. Now it would have
no,
worked out.
that would have worked out. So let's talk about what we're all here for. Let's talk about a little bit of what happened after Kona. Because, like, was it cool? Was Hawaii nice? Like, did you see something, smell something, eat something? What was going on?
Yeah, I stayed for a whole week. It was great. I stayed. My parents stayed until Wednesday. The race was Saturday. My parents stayed until Wednesday, and then Livia and I stayed all the way until the next Saturday. So we had lots of time. Like first couple days, I didn't do much because I was pretty cranked. Then we started doing some excursion things my parents paid for, which was awesome. And thanks to them if they're listening. There was like the luau dinner thing where you get a pretty basic dinner, but then there's like the fire dancing and the different types of hula dancing and stuff that you get to see, which was pretty neat to see those different. That fire dancing is crazy, man. They spin a freaking fire baton and like runs into them and shit, and they like put the fire sword on their mouth and stuff. It's nuts.
I bet I could.
It was crazy.
Try to
And
learn
then
that.
we did that manta ray tour where like they have the boards that you go and swim out and like float on basically, and they have this blue light and these giant manta rays come and eat all the plankton that are attracted to the blue light. They're huge. Like they're like as big as your bedroom. Like they're massive. Maybe not your bedroom, Nick or Garrick, but a regular bedroom.
I saw video
so
from a Team Zoot guy who did that, and it looked incredible.
They're literally like an inch from you. Like you have to like literally try not to touch them because otherwise you're not supposed to touch them. Like if they touch you, it's fine. But a couple of bastards from our tour were touching them and they got in shit.
It's like
what else?
It's like when you go to the strip club.
Snorkeling. Then we went and hiked up to the top of Mauna Kea, which is 4,200 meters and like 13,800 feet, which is pretty fun. We hiked from like 9,000 up to 13,800 at the top, which is it was neat.
How did that feel in the lungs?
It was like you could notice the lack of oxygen. I had been a few weeks at Castle Rock, so I think I was acclimated a bit, which helped. But yeah, it was like definitely way slower going than if you were just doing it at like half that height. And it was steep. Like the first hour and a half of the hike was like 15+% steepness up like dirt road, basically. So that was cool. And there's this lake up there that like the scientists don't really understand why it like the water doesn't just like soak into the ground like it does everywhere else. There's this one lake where it's like they're like, I don't know. There's a couple theories about like ash from the volcano that prevented it from water from seeping in, but it's like a really like religious place for the Hawaiian people because they like believe it's like a holy lake that was put there by their god or whatever, which is cool. So you're not supposed to touch that lake, and then you're also not supposed to like go to the actual peak of the mountain. There's a lower peak that's like probably 20 feet lower that you go to. That's right beside it.
What happens if you go to the upper peak?
Well, nothing happens. They just discourage it because it's like a religious thing. They have like a rock hut there, and it's like a thing with their gods and stuff that they believe in. So you just try not to. It is really cool, and we went to the other side of the mountain where it's like a literal rainforest. Like you went to these falls called Akaka Falls or something, and it's like it looks like the Amazon jungle. It was pouring rain, freaking vegetation, lush, more than you'll ever see anywhere. Like just like pretty awesome. Like
did you get in the water?
Movie with the rock.
Avatar.
Didn't get in the water. No, you couldn't go into the actual waterfall for that one, but there's some that you could. But yeah, we pretty much saw everything you could. Oh, and then we went back to the like not the very top of the mountain, but up really high to do stargazing because they have like really amazing like in Hawaii, you'll notice like none of the street lights create any light pollution because they're like covered at the top and they point only down. So like all their public lighting is totally like creates no light pollution. So you go up to the mountain above the clouds, and the clouds like block any light. Plus, there isn't really any anyways. So you see just like a crazy amount of stars like you've never seen before. It was awesome. Yeah. So anyway, it was fun.
Did your iPhone capture the depth of stars?
Well, let me see if you can see through the screen, through my screen.
I bet it'll be HD.
It will. You watch.
So while you're doing
Yeah.
that, could you imagine riding a bike up that road?
That would be crazy hard. Okay, wait. Let me see.
Doesn't Phil
See
Guyman
that?
have the KOM for it?
Whoa, bro, that looks like it's on Encyclopedia Britannica. It's like the Milky
I know.
Way.
It's you literally see the Milky Way 100%.
That's
Phil Guyman,
insane.
yeah, probably. So there's like the main road. There's a highway that like goes across the island, and the highest that gets to is like 6,600 feet or so. But then there's the Mauna Kea access road that goes from that 6,600, takes you up to 9,000 or 9,200 where the visitor center is. And if you want to go up to the top from there, they make you wait half an hour because you need to acclimate to the altitude. Then you can actually drive up to the top, but there is part that's dirt road, and you need like a all-wheel drive vehicle to do it. And none of the rental car agencies will let you take their car up there, even though the road's like pretty basic. So we hiked from there up, and if Phil Guyman has a KOM, it might be to the visitor center, or he might have like taken a gravel bike, I guess. And just
It's a
gone all the way
wild
up.
story about him like going up, biking to the visitor center, and he like blew through the visitor center.
Oh, and they chase him.
And they chased him down, and then he had to like sign a release form or something, and then they eventually let him
During the
go.
attempt?
But then they didn't let his support vehicle go with him, so he lost all his water. He did the whole last part of it without any water or anything, and he had to walk part of the gravel at the end.
Isn't there
crazy.
like a very small number of people who've done like the sea level to summit?
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh,
Yeah,
he went all the way from sea level.
That's what I
Wow.
want to do next year when I go.
So you're gonna have to, you might have to like go the day before and talk to the people about it to like get your forms figured out. I mean, you could just stop. Like, it's not like you're trying to go for a record or
No,
something.
I wouldn't go for any record. I'd just stop.
It's probably a
Eat a
good place
sandwich.
to stop for 30 minutes anyway, because you're at 9,000 feet and you got to go up to 13,800. It's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
But the craziest thing is, I wanted to go into, I haven't really talked about this on the podcast, but I've mentioned it before. Matt Hanson, by the way, super stoked for him to come through the 10th place at Kona.
Yes.
On his 8th attempt. He has his best day on the most competitive day, like unreal. And I wasn't at all surprised, but he, like, when I say to people he's the most, like, might be the most talented athlete in the world in triathlon, like, that's not an exaggeration. So there's a road in Colorado. It's the highest road, the highest paved road in America. It goes to 14,000 feet, and it's near his place. I forget the name of it, but there's no like signing a form or anything. You can just go and drive up there, ride up there. And he does a lot of like, not a lot, but he does some of his like Ironman work where it's like, okay, just go ride the climb at Ironman power. And it's probably very similar to what I just explained. It goes like 9 to 14,000. And he does it at Ironman power all the way up to 14,000 feet. And like,
Jeez.
he said how he had to stop for a second, like 15 minutes from the end, because whatever, something happened. He had to like pick something or fix a shoe or something happened, and he stopped for a second. He kept going, and then he's like, then after that, my heartbeat was 10 beats a minute higher. It was crazy. It was so hard. I'm like, dude, you're a freak of nature. How do you even like, do you understand how hard that is? Like, I go to 6,000 feet at his place and I'm like 20 watts low the whole time, no matter how much acclimated I am. And he's losing 10 watts at 14,000 feet. It's unreal. Like, he is astounding. And all his runs at 6-minute mile are faster every single mile, even the uphill miles. Like, he is just such a beast. It's so impressive. And man, to see him go and do that, run from 30, he was like 31st, 32nd range to get into 10th in Kona. I think he had the second fastest run, or like top 3 anyway, like super stellar. He's 39. So
do you think those guys that train in Mexico City, do you think they lose much?
what do you mean lose much?
Like Thomas
Like, at
Rodriguez
altitude?
Hernandez, yeah. Do you think he handles altitude pretty good?
Well, I mean, he's probably got some other factors helping him out or whatever, or not. I don't know. But Yeah, I bet you Matt could go with anyone at altitude. You put a race at 10,000 feet, Matt Hanson's winning that thing for sure. Him or Christian. Anyways, that's just my little spiel about how great Matt Hanson is. And
What's the altitude in Vail? Because they have, or is it Beaver Creek? They have the Xterra race.
That's like 7,000 or 6,000.
No, that's
No,
weird.
it's higher than that. It's like 10
Oh,
or
is it?
something. It's like Vail, Colorado. Let's check it. Everybody Google it.
It's either Vail or Beaver Creek.
That's 8,000 in Beaver Creek.
8,150 in Vail.
Hmm.
The summit of Vail is 11,570. I don't know.
Shit's weak.
Jeez.
Anyways,
Yeah, I've never
Anyone who's
actually
not
really
been to altitude.
felt altitude. Like I've been to altitude and like trained mostly training wise altitude, like in obviously staying with Matt and stuff. And it didn't. None of my power numbers or paces, anything changed when I was there. And
that's
then I had
crazy.
one push. Some of the best watts ever was 70.3 Boulder when I did 333 watts on the bike.
I think everybody has like a different limiting factor for what it is that maxes them out. And some people
Yeah.
it's probably more oxygen related, and some people it's probably more like biomechanic efficiency or like muscular endurance or whatever.
I did ultra all over 9,000 feet.
Oh, I remember that. That was during COVID, right?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, you had some dark moments. How was that?
Dark moments, they come and go, but you never forget the taste of it. It's like your first prom night.
Yeah, it just tastes like iron.
What? All right. So
Blood.
so the rest of the situation that we have going on for this episode is another stellar athlete, Ben Kanute Maximus. He's going to come on and talk about anything we ask him. Big news, probably. What do you think the news will be?
Is he the best looking triathlete, do you think, in triathlon?
I think he went vegan.
You think that's the big news?
What?
Or he switched to Geico.
He's sponsored by Certified Piedmontese.
Yeah, they came out with an impossible Piedmonteser. It's made of wheat.
Well, for sure we'll get into. I'm probably not going to be on it because I'll be in sleep mode. But
Wait,
I'm sure somebody's going to ask him, "Hey, what's the? You worked with Jim Vance for 8 years. You're moving on. So what are you moving on to, and what do you want to say about it?"
Yeah, we'll probably ask him. But so now that you're both spontaneously Garrick in the off season, what the hell does that mean? What does that even mean? It's so early.
What do you mean? What does it
Yeah.
mean? It's like November.
It's
Yeah, so
it
you
is
know, like
kind of
start
training
early.
in November in Canada / almost Canada is not that fun. So
I will admit it is weird, dude, being in the off season and like this time, I don't know, like late October, early November, and I'm just like, okay, I have one more week of off season, and then what am I gonna do? I'm just gonna start training again. Training for what?
Indian Wells, December 15th, man.
Yeah. It's like, well, I can't. Morgan has her white coat ceremony, but it's like, what the heck am I gonna do? Like, what am I training for? I don't understand. Because usually I always take my break over Christmas, and then it's like it's perfect. January 1, you get back in the training, but now it's like,
yeah.
what do I do?
Me too.
Or usually I'm injured and I can't train anyways, which
Okay,
you know
how
is
about this
how your off
idea,
season
Garrett?
should be.
Crazy idea, Rick. Crazy idea of real actual base season of like 6 weeks where you're just building up your mileage. Your workouts don't get too crazy. Maybe you do some like sprints, but not like long threshold intervals and stuff. And you mostly do a bunch of zone 2 work, build some long rides in there and let your body just do the Pogacar. Doesn't he ride like 6 hours at 330 watts, which is
Yeah, but
zone 2 for him?
He only has 3 zones. His zone tune is like the majority of the zones. It's a third of all the zones. Of course, he spends a lot of time there.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could do that. We could go get a lactate meters and test our lactate all the time.
I was thinking of doing a marathon on an indoor track.
Why?
That sounds great.
I'm just kidding. That sounds like the worst idea ever.
I'd rather do one on a treadmill.
Oh yeah,
Oh
but
God, no way.
that's not even that hard. That's just a 3 hour run on a treadmill. That's not like
Let it be known that during COVID, I ran a standalone, throw your hat up in the air and see and go when it starts marathon on my own. And I'm going to do it again this year in homage, and I have to go faster. I went 2:39 or
It
whatever.
was fast. Was it 2:30? I
So
thought it was 2:42. 40.
No.
I forget, but it was quick.
It was 2:39, didn't go sub, or just went sub 2:40. And so I'm going to go do hopefully 2:30, under 2:36. I got to beat Cam Worth.
I did see that
That's
he ran
insane.
that. Man, I was thinking about doing the Houston Marathon, but it's right it's just not right. Doesn't fit with the camp schedule to the
Nothing
point where it
does.
would make sense.
Camp schedule is always a bit fucked for most people are like, well, I got a bat mitzvah to go to, or my birthday's then, or we already have a planned trip.
Nick, are you on Strava?
Yeah,
What's your name?
I'm
Race
secret.
Chase?
I don't let people follow me on Strava because I hide everything. No, you can find me. It's public. I got people message me all the time and ask for tips and how many crunches to do.
Well, I don't. There you are. Follow. There you go. Got another follower,
But
Nick.
Look
Nick,
at
you're
me.
asking, what do we do during off season? Well, tonight, because I was able to get off work by 6 o'clock. So there's a 7-Eleven that got robbed in Canton, and when I was looking it up, I noticed there's a new place called Peach Cobbler right next to it. And yeah, so we went and tried that, and they have peach cobbler and these giant cookies.
Get out.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. So I did that. We did
So
that
you're
today.
supporting all the businesses of the places around where things got robbed because everybody else is avoiding them?
Yeah, it wasn't really a robbery. Some guy stole like a donation bin or something. I mean, yeah, he stole like it, but it wasn't the robbery you're thinking of.
It wasn't
Also,
like armed robbery or
I've had
something.
McDonald's twice already, and I tried the new Big Mac chicken.
What?
Yeah,
Big Mac chicken?
yeah, Big Mac chicken.
Yeah, I've seen that.
All right,
Nick,
real
I see
quick.
your marathon PR of 3:05 on Strava, so I don't know if you've actually done it.
And I'm actually looking through Training Peaks right now, which is my next point of go ahead and look at your Training Peaks during COVID. It's the weirdest thing because you're like,
No, just yours, Nick.
Yeah, just
Because
Nick's.
you did Everesting on a gravel bike on the most effed up road ever. You did an 100K ultra that was only in mountains. It wasn't even a run. It was like an ultra hike. And you did a marathon. What else did you do?
I'm looking for that marathon. I don't understand why. Maybe I came in a point too short or some shit and it didn't log it on Strava. That had to be it. Yeah, I did some mountain biking. And looking back at it, it's just like there's no swimming. Where's all the swimming?
Well, the pools were closed for some of it.
I know, but I'm
And
in
St.
like
George are closed for like 3-4 days.
I don't. Did something happen to Training Peaks? Because like I don't have any scheduled workouts in January, even 2021.
You were in today's plan for a while. Do you
Oh,
remember
that's
that?
why. You're right. Oh my fuck. Oh wait, I found it. It was in March of 2021. I didn't even do it. No, this isn't it. Oh, this is a
that's
different.
COVID.
This is just a 17-mile run in Florida that was 2 hours. I don't understand. I'm not even
All right,
looking.
we're gonna cut
looking at
to
my
the,
Training Peaks.
the interview now because we're still recording.
I'm not even looking at my
No, I
Training
think people want to see this.
See what? Oh my
Anyways,
God.
Nick did a marathon fast. He also did that ultra run that's 100K, which was harder than most 100-mile ultras, according to all the guys who did it, who are like seasoned veterans.
And I got to say for
And-
sure that I did get a couple of pats on the back. I told this ultra running gal that I did that, and she was like, "Oh my God, that's harder than most 100-milers." I was like, "That's right."
Well, I just wish I'd saved them because we used to send each other these like just like video recaps of our life
Yeah.
during COVID for some reason. And I got some great ones from Nick, like when he froze to almost death at the Bear Lake Brawl, and he was in the car and he was like, "I can't undo my helmet." He's like chattering like this, and then he sent me a couple like during his Everesting, like on his breaks, and it was like a 3 hour update. He's like, "Yeah, I'm feeling all right, and it's fine." And then at his 6 hour update, where he was like less than halfway done, he was like, "Oh my God, man, I don't know if I can do this. It's terrible. I'm dying. All I can drink is Red Bull." Then he went like another 6 hours. It was insane. I wish I saved those. Those are freaking gems, man.
Oh man, you gotta. Oh wait, yeah, they're lost completely. Anyways, we're gonna find. So it had to have been in 2021 because remember 2020 earlier, like March, we raced Campeche. I just saw that.
Yeah, that was the last thing that happened before the world shut down.
I know we
Yeah,
were
that
like
was
in the
before.
airport when it shut down. So I don't know when I ran that marathon. I got to find the date. I'll ask my buddy Joe. He'll know. Anyways, yeah, we got to get into this episode because this is just turning into a shit show.
Yeah, but it's really good.
I just got to find that run. I don't know why I can't find it. I have Ironman Florida, and then COVID happened. I forgot I did Ironman Florida.
So, anyways, Ben
Jeez.
Kanute, we'll hear about his day at Kona. He did,
A
looking at
little
his
better than
recap,
you.
he had a solid day going, kind of started faltering towards the end of the bike, struggled on the run, rallied a little bit at the half marathon, but then struggled towards the end again. Did a lot better than me, as everyone did, except for like two guys. Well, I know a few guys didn't finish, so depends how you count it. But and that was also his first attempt at Kona, despite having been there many times. So
Wait. Oh, like training there.
yeah, he's been there many times to train, but this is the first time he did the race.
Okay, that's it. All right. Well, thanks for listening this long. Suppose we should get to the.
I'm sure it'll be cut quite a bit.
It'll be cut.
As promised, we're back and we've brought in an extra special guest, Ben Kanute, who spontaneously decided to make some decisions and have some things happen today that we didn't even plan on talking about, but we have to eventually.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's I guess so. Not sure what those spontaneous things are, but yeah, hit me with them.
It's a cliffhanger.
yeah. So how does it feel to get dropped by Jim Vance?
Get dropped. I think
I'm kidding. That
I mean
is a joke.
that's yeah, a little harsh, I
We
guess.
read you.
But,
Yeah.
you
No,
know, I didn't
you
realize
made
I was
that.
coming on the tabloid of podcasts, just
That's
hitting
a-
hard hitting questions.
That's
Oh
right.
yeah. This is TMT triathlon.
No,
Yeah.
honestly, we don't have to get to that part yet. That's just a prelim question, but we absolutely want to hear about that awesome
Yeah.
relationship and any thoughts. Like, obviously, that's not the goal of you being here today. The goal of you being here today wasn't about any of that. It was mainly just like you've been to Kona to do some few camps. What is the town like without Ironman there? I got to know that. What is it
Yeah.
really like? Is traffic shitty?
Yeah, and no worries. I mean, that post came out. You guys asked me a few days ago to come on here, and that just, yeah, kind of happened. So, but yeah, the town is, yeah, I wouldn't say it's sleepy. You know, it's small town, but like rush hour, if you hit the Queen K, like it doesn't matter if it's during the race or not. Like it seems like 3 p.m. going south on the Queen K, south of town, where we stayed both times, just backed up with traffic, school traffic, work traffic, whatever it was. But I think like the vibe of the town definitely changed. So when we went to the camp there, I'm the only weird one running around town in latex and, you know, maybe in the race suit or Speedos or anything. There's maybe a little bit here or there, but it's definitely more of kind of a laid back tourist cruise ship town that's somewhat sleepy. Just, you know, I think people go out to Hawaii, maybe, you know, this is just my uneducated opinion, but it seems like you go out there to kind of get away from it all and just kind of do your thing. There's a cool little community there, but I find there's a lot of houses that are just kind of tucked away up the mountain, and the people in town are all super nice, but it doesn't feel like, you know, the whole town ever congregates at once until, you know, race week when we bring in a couple thousand triathletes, put them in town, and then the vibes just get super nuts. And I stayed like probably 6 miles south of town and found that the energy in the expo area was awesome, super high, but I was able to kind of find like a sleepier part of town, I guess, where we were tucked away in a condo complex. And that's where, I think I had a pretty good balance. So got the whole, I guess, sleepy town vibe, and then also got the whole crazy town. But I will say, like, I rode up to Javi a few times and out on the Queen K a bunch during the camp race week. That's their commuting highway, man. Like sometimes we were out there, we're like, where are all these cars going? This can't all be tourists and stuff. So that's the uneducated triathlete version coming in. Maybe there's a Hawaiian local who can be like, oh yeah, everybody, commutes out to Kauai to the port town for the jobs or something like that. But yeah, I found it to be, it's not super busy, but it was busier than I maybe thought it was around like just the couple months before, rather than because everybody knows how busy it gets in town during the race week. So that's my kind of viewpoint, I guess.
Did you do much riding elsewhere, like up any other roads? Because I just found we got yelled at a lot by being on any road other than the Queen K. Did you find that was prominent outside of the race?
I have two stories. One is, so south, like if you go all the way down on Elite south to like mile 5.5, 6, you take a right and you keep going all the way down. Yes, down towards Captain Cook. I will say, we went there during the camp, and that is a lot of climbing. It's huge climb. Like it's just straight up. It's steep. Like if you look at the Strava segments, people get up it quick, but takes a huge amount of watts. And when you descend it, you can hit over 50 miles an hour, like without pedaling. And the crosswinds still can be super nuts out there. So people who did that, I feel like road bikes are king when it comes to some of the downhill Strava segments in Kona. Cause I don't know about anybody else, but I was always like soaking wet whenever I was training or riding my bike. Like, so the grips, I just felt like if I hit a bump the wrong way, I'm sliding off and I'm just like taking a face full of asphalt right now. But yeah, we went out and Jim's got an electric bike and we were doing just an easy ride, but there was no way we were going easy because it was all uphill. But yeah, that shoulder kind of narrows and it goes away and people still drive pretty fast. So like, it's super cool riding, but I feel like you have to do it early in the morning or when there's not a lot of people, because I don't think most cyclists really go south to Captain Cook that much. We flipped it before we started descending down, but I found that to be a little, too crowded for a bike. But then I went up, I did some running on Walua Road, which is kind of a neighborhood road that sits at about, 700 to 1,000 feet above sea level, which was awesome, but also did a bit of riding up there. And I did a little loop that went up Palani and just kept climbing and then took a neighborhood road down. And actually everybody was super nice to me there. I think any place you go and ride, you get cars that are not happy to see you on the road and sharing the road. And I will say, I imagine in Hawaii, it's really hard to build small roads with big shoulders because of the terrain there, just the vegetation plus the lava rock, but was fine. And then I will say just getting down from the mountain can be absolutely terrifying because like I said, I climbed for about like 30, 45 minutes or so, get up to a neighborhood and you take a left and it's literally the stair stepper down that has no stop signs, maybe one toward the bottom, no stoplights, and you could just let it go even though there's crosswinds and stuff. And my hands were all sweaty. I'm like, triathleting it down in my TT bike, just like kind of gripping the brakes, like at with 35 miles an hour.
Ass back as far as it can go.
Oh yeah, just ass back. And I'm just looking both ways at every intersection. And sure enough, there was one like garbage or dump truck that just like swung out. And I'm just yelling like, no,
I have children.
Like I can't stop, like even with disc brakes. But yeah, and then it's really interesting and funny to go and look on Strava because like the segment is just like let your brakes go and pray basically. But it's gnarly. You just lose like 1,500 feet in like 2 miles and it's all like straight down. So if you get the right day where there's no crosswind, you could totally hit 60 miles an hour going down that.
There was one road for a quick segment. Mark and I did this climb the day after the race and I hit 59. and it was only for like 2 seconds, but I looked at the Strava segment. Someone hit like 67 miles an hour. Like, what the hell?
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's maybe it's from having kids and a family and stuff, but like that sort of descending stuff where you're like partway out of control. I'm like, I'd rather just keep my, tires on the pavement than risk it all for Strava kudos.
We got to introduce our expert descender, lauded by the professionals. He just showed up unannounced at Jackson Laundry.
I've been crashed since 2022.
It's not a bad track record. Could be worse.
Only one big crash, and that was just the only one. And then
I crashed in St. George on your friggin' gravel.
He always blames me when he crashes.
I was like, we're taking this corner pretty hard on. Nick knows what he's doing, though. It's fine. There's gravel that's like camouflaged into the exact same everything as the chip seal. You would never see it. Just hit it and went down so hard, broke my thumb.
I've followed Nick before down a descent before, Worlds when we were out there training, and he knows all of those descents. Meanwhile, I'm here just following, and he's like hugging the yellow, like taking all the corners around. I'm like, I can't even see around this. Like, I know there's some asshole in a pickup coming around the corner, and Nick's just like one handing it down Snow Canyon and stuff. And I'm like,
yeah, with his friggin' GoPro.
I don't know. You jump out of some shit in the military, and going down on a bike isn't so scary, I guess.
Touche. That's fair enough. I see you riding the motorized bikes and stuff like that out there. That's another level too. The quads and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I used to grow up as a kid racing those little bastards, and now the only reason why we have one is because it's got that Shaka bra it has breasts on it. It's the best sticker I've ever seen on a off-road vehicle, so we had to get it.
Nice.
Did it come with that new, or was it used?
No, it's in 1986. It's my birth year. That's why we also had to get it.
Yes.
Nice.
So anyways, Ben, any other Jackson or Garrick, anything you want to drill Ben with?
So for most of the people who have not listened to who are listening to this podcast, haven't been to Kona. You've been to Kona now during race week and not during race week. Did you find the locals had a different attitude towards them during that time, or towards you during that time?
I don't think so. Honestly, like I didn't run into anybody who seemed that angry that we were there. I got a haircut the few days before the race, and was just chatting, and it was a very kind of local shop. It was the only one that was open that day late, and the woman cut my hair. I was like, oh yeah, I'm racing. And she was nice. She was asking about it, like, oh, have you done it before? Whatever. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, we're taking over your tent. She's like, don't be sorry. Like, it's like basically like she was like, it's cool. Like, I think part of it is, as long as the people are respectful, I think the reason why locals would get angry is when we feel entitled to the town just because it's the world champs, because we train so hard to get there and all of that. And I don't feel like necessarily a lot of the pros feel that way. Like maybe we might stop because we're refueling or stuff, but like whenever we were out there, we always tried to find the right pull-offs or get out of people's ways, not block traffic. Most of the photographers, I would say, who are out there are pretty respectful at not slowing down people in town and stuff like that and staying out of people's ways. But when you start blocking the road, slowing down or just doing like major touristy stuff that I think you could probably group into just any tourist coming in and, thinking they own the place when they really don't live there. That's where I think the disrespect comes. And when I think about, if you doubled the amount of athletes on the island, then I see how when they had, the two races there where they tried to fill both days, it really does. We shut down the town for a little bit because it just takes twice as long to get anywhere. And we shut down like the main center of town, and it's really hard to get around it. So I could see why on those couple days it's pretty annoying. But I felt like for the most part, the vibe I got from the locals was not necessarily that, oh, this is a terrible thing that we have going on here. I think a lot of people who are involved in like local business or see the race and stuff have some sort of appreciation for it. And then there's stuff that, if any one of us had a race come into our town and take over, or any event, like, I got the Barrett Jackson car show that comes here and waste management and stuff. And, you avoid that part of town because, you know, it's annoying. People come in and take over and plug up the roads and stuff, but we're able to get around it here. It's a little harder to get around it on the Big Island. So I kind of have some empathy and sympathy and stuff for the locals, but I think as long as we're just respectful and keep it that way and be really appreciative, then, you know, you start to win more and more people over.
Yeah, hearts and minds. I think that was what I noticed about most people who were there participating or spectating is they were all very aware. And I think we have to be if we want that to continue, just because it does. Now that I've seen the scope of just how small that town is and what we do to shut everything down and have a whole week of events, you gotta like really hats off. Because in St. George, if it really impeded us that much, you know, they wouldn't do it.
I saw the same thing. I would say for the most part, everybody's pretty respectful to the locals, and the locals seem to not mind the athletes being there. The one exception was when I went for the longest ride I did there, which was a week out. The day after, it was the day after I got there. It's a week before. Matt and I went out for a ride, and the guy riding just ahead of us, some age group guy, whatever, was just riding in his aero bars, not slowing down at all through red lights on the Queen K, like pretty major road, and like not even slowing down. He was looking, but he was just blasting right through them with cars there. Like, it's like, dude, this is not a good look. Like, you should at least slow down and brake and come to a, like, you shouldn't really run the red lights and when there's cars around, in my opinion. It doesn't look good, but also,
well, and
it's kind of different. It's different than a stop sign. Like a stop sign, if you come to an almost stop, it's like, okay, you know, people get that. If you're blasting through a red light on a major road, it's not really a good look for the triathletes coming in and just taking over. And
I agree.
I got tailwind.
There's a few. I'd say there's a few things that triathletes should just not do there. It's one, like, I think you got to obey the rules of the road, like blowing through. And that's like a 15-minute section that if you care that much about continuing your interval and not stopping, just start out farther. Like, it's such a simple thing. Like, the Queen K has 0 stoplights for like 20 miles between the airport and Waikoloa. So to start I started some of my intervals in there and I would stop in the middle because it's just like, why would you blow through? It's such a short light anyways. And then I couldn't stand and I couldn't believe it. And I guess it wasn't a respect thing. I was just like, why would you do that? People riding in their aero bars on Elite Drive. I was mind blown because that's such a terrible, bumpy road overall. So many blind corners, so crowded during race week with pedestrians, cars, bikes. I was like, somebody is going to ruin their race by doing that.
I ran that road almost every morning from the farthest end out, almost to where that hill goes up by where you stayed, I think. Yeah. And every morning around 7:30 or 8, the traffic was literally backed up at every stop sign, which is, I think there's 2 of them, for like 50 to 60 cars. Meanwhile, runners are going counterflow so they can see who's coming ahead of them. Cyclists are coming at the runners who are going counterflow. Cars are also double passing. Like, Elite E, I think, is the most dangerous place race week. It's savage.
But you know, you got to fit in your intervals and get in your aero bar time on Elite because you know the course even goes on Elite.
No one else can see me.
Anyway, that's just the thing. Whatever. If you're going to a race anywhere, just don't blow through freaking red lights. Like, that's a good way for the locals to complain. It doesn't take that much of complaints for a race to not be allowed back.
Yeah.
Because most people just aren't going to say anything. And if a dozen people complain to the mayor or whatever, like, that might be all it takes. So, you know, it's a privilege to race in these places, not a right. So just,
exactly.
Anyways, that's my thoughts.
And so going into the race, Ben, had you done those camps and got a good feeling for kind of what to expect heat wise? Like, how were race day conditions in your opinion versus what you had previously felt? And did the preparation seem to be as effective as you had hoped it would have been?
Yeah, so I think my prep and training and everything were some of the best I've ever done. I had training in Kona, training here in Phoenix. I had some of the best power I've ever pushed in the heat. It was very similar to the power I was pushing before Roth last year, and that was training in San Diego in like the cool weather. I think that my nutrition and my fueling and stuff were all really dialed. I was working with Scott at Fuelin and spent a lot of time talking to him, like tracking sweat tests. All we did a bunch of that on the Big Island. Um, and yeah, I was feeling, really solid coming into the race. Just had some really good workouts. And the day, so when I was there, I got a range of conditions of, heat, wind, a little bit cooler days, some clouds. Like I felt like I got almost everything. And then when I first got to the island too, we had some super windy days in Javi to the point where it was like, I think a red flag warning and stuff. Like it was borderline dangerous to ride like out there. Like I heard Laidlaw, like I saw him riding the same day and we chatted. I didn't even go all the way up to Javi. I went up a little bit and then turned. But I mean, I got blown out of my aero bars a couple times. Like it was 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and that
Whoa.
would have been super gnarly in the race. But race day, honestly, could not have been more perfect for half the day. It was zero wind. I would say the swell was absolutely perfect for the water. Aside from the jellyfish, I don't know what the heck that was. That wasn't ideal, but almost everybody got stung by a jellyfish.
So just a quick story on that. You may have all heard it, but Ironman was warmed by I don't know which group because that's like 2 days after a full moon every time that happens, no matter what. And that was told to Ironman, and they were just like, fuck it, we got to do it. What are we going to do? Change it? But they knew it was going to happen.
That's wild that happens. Yeah, no, I mean, it was crazy because I remember going in the water. I was one of the first in and swimming out and being like, man, did I like cut myself shaving last night? And why does my face hurt? Like, I know that it was like on my nose and right like on my forehead at first. And I was like, what in the heck is going on? And then somebody at the start line was like, did you guys get stung by a jellyfish? I'm like, yeah, that's what that was. And we all were chatting about it. So everybody, got stung. But yeah, the bike, almost zero wind. Like it was insane. Like I was riding out, like even going up Javi, I don't know if I've ever really seen it that calm. Like I look out to the left as you're climbing up, which is out to the ocean, zero white caps all the way up to Javi, which is wild when you think about it, because all of the whole wind comes and just like batters the island and goes around it, and that north end is where Javi sits, so all the wind comes through Javi.
It's like a channel.
Yeah, and there was no white caps. And then I think on the way back we had a little bit, but it was coming like off the ocean, which is also a little weird for the island. So we had the most wind I felt all the way out and then back to Waikoloa was the helicopter. That was like the biggest blowing of wind that we got, which was actually kind of intense. It had a weird sucking motion because of how low it was. And it was actually really pretty cool. Like it didn't feel that hot at all. And the clouds covered us all the way up basically to the top of Javi. So the way back, I would say, is when the wind picked up a little bit, kind of coming off the ocean for like a crosswind coming into town. And then the sun came out and it started to get warmer like from there. And then I would say probably the marathon was pretty warm. Can't really speak too much to that because I was not really running that fast overall. So I don't really know what it'd be like at pace, but it seemed like pretty humid and just not a ton of wind, especially in town.
Yeah, on Alii, it was so stagnant for the opening part of that marathon for you all.
Yeah, and that's how I think it usually is, because you got the trees and the people and just there's not a lot of wind that comes through. Plus, like the sun is kind of at its worst for Alii because it's basically when we come through at its highest point and there's no real shade on that road, when other times of day you get some shade from the buildings and the trees and stuff.
Yeah, so at least conditions were pretty favorable, which was
Super
why we
fast.
saw some massive speeds from both cyclists and runners. Like it was just a record day. It was awesome. Any other takeaways from that race, Ben, that stuck out to you, or performances or anything that was like, how the hell do these people do this to that much faster?
Not necessarily, because I didn't feel like I must have overrode at some point, because body just wasn't cooperating. Missed a couple bottles like of water to kind of stay cool and keep hydrating to take in the nutrition. So maybe some small things added up. I kind of expected my body to handle it a lot better than that. But honestly, it's just one, I think, Patrick, it's not like he said it himself, like he had the perfect day for him, and he really did. Like he rode it super smart and strong, and then
Well,
was able to run.
swam
Yeah.
like his life depended on it. It was amazing.
Yeah. He just set it up well, and then he ran, how Patrick runs. Like he ran super quick. And everybody else, I think you could see the toll of the ride a little bit more and how hot it was, because I expected run times to be faster. Like you can go back and watch my YouTube. Like I think I claimed, it'd take a 46-minute swim, like a 4-hour bike, and a 2:35 marathon to basically win it. We essentially saw all of those. Granted, the 46 was from an age grouper, and we swam 47.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody, a ton of people rode around 4 hours. And we had, Patrick being close to that 2:35 mark, but then everybody was well above that. I think, Hanson ran 2:40 low, 2:42, 2:44.
2:45 even.
Yeah. And then the rest of the guys, like Rudy, ran 2:48. I think Magnus was similar because he came off the bike a bit for like ahead. So it was just kind of like a grinded out kind of day if you could just find your rhythm. And that's where I think the guys who were smart and really measured and didn't put in many efforts. Like I think Menno was probably one of the strongest riders in that pack besides Marquardt, because he was at the front quite a bit from what I remember. And Matthew Marquardt also drove the pace quite a bit as well. And then my main kind of push was up Javi, and Menno seemed to pay the least amount for that. Marquardt had a better race than me, but he seemed to fade a bit on the marathon after being up there. And then everybody else, like, Leon, I think, was the best example that he kind of rode his race and rode it hard, but he was able to catch the pack because of that versus a lot of the surginess and stuff. So, yeah, it was just kind of super interesting dynamics. And I think we're seeing racing in general leaning more towards being fast on the bike, not even necessarily strong, but just fast overall and efficient.
That was proven. I mean, even every year that I can remember coming up to the sport watching Kona, it's always like the top 10 off the bike usually slip back into the 20s. And then it was a lot of the guys who were in that 25th to 15th position who could manage their day a little bit better and then run their way up. I think that's what I always noticed about Kona. Very few times aside from last year when Lalo survived, and do you see like such a hard bike really come to fruition, which is why we were all like, oh, well, he's probably going to blow up. Norwegian's going to catch him. But he just held on. So I think that's really something new also.
Yeah. And I just think, especially, with the 12-meter drafting, the pack, it's just much harder to break up the pack.
Because we're going faster too. Like the bike speeds are so much faster. So that 15 meters is effectively feels probably like 12 meters now because of that extra speed in the group, guy after guy.
And it's when you have a day where there's low wind, like Ben said, like I didn't know there was any wind until the turnaround, like on the descent, like a couple gusts, but nothing scary. Like I wasn't worried about it. And when you have a group of, what was it, like 15 of you that are all strong and like, okay, maybe there's a 10% differential in power numbers between the best guy in that group and the worst guy or whatever, but that's not enough to break the group up. Like I mean, I don't know. I'd be curious your thoughts, Ben, but I would love to like see Ironman go to a 20-meter rule to where people who push the bike actually get something out of it, maybe, and get to separate.
Well, and it's just, I think that, and that's honestly, that's why I pushed on Javi, because that's always been like a pivotal time in the race and where people who have been suffering have kind of dropped off. And that's what I kind of thought, because I was like, this was a really hot ride up to this point. Like it was like, at least from where I was sitting, and I was always in like the top 5 on the way out. Like my normalized power to Quai High was probably right around, it had started to drop under 330 at that point, but I sat
Wow.
above 330 for a while at the front of that group. And then um like I think when we started climbing up Javi, it had dropped a bit because the pace lulled, so it was more like 325 or so, and it bumped back up to 328 by the turn. But I was like, yeah, I think it's been hot. Maybe some people will drop off if we keep the pace high, and just see what happens. Plus, I felt super good at that point, which was kind of a lesson of don't trust your body like that. It's playing tricks on you, I guess. But
That's exactly
um,
what happened to me in the same way at the same times in the
yeah,
5 minutes further back group. I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good. I'm gonna push it up to Javi and
yeah.
break away. And like I think that just even though it
I
felt good
found
the
it.
whole way up, I think that cooked me for once we got back to Queen K.
Well, I think what happened to me too was we got water the last time, like, what was it, like right before Quai High or something? And then there really wasn't an aid station, maybe at the bottom of Javi or something. I can't really remember, but there wasn't one until the top. And I was pretty much out at that point. So refilled a bit, but I was also pretty careful to not have a bottle be ejected from my back, like water bottle cage. I was kind of wary of that through most of the first half of the ride because I was like, yeah, that would suck to get a 30-second penalty for unintentional littering when you're like in the group. But
Yeah.
then because the effort was solid up, then we flipped it and we kept it solid on the way down. Like we still averaged like 320 on the downhill, which just felt so much harder to me than climbing. That even started to cook me a bit. And that aid station placement at the bottom of Javi is just god awful. Like it's at a kind of a fast section, and I don't know if anybody got water there because
Isn't
we were
that where
going.
Laidlow just punched all of them on the video? I think I saw that one.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, that one, there were a couple. The very first aid station was poorly placed because we were rolling through over 25 miles an hour and nobody really
Yeah.
wanted to slow down. And then the one at the bottom of Javi was also poorly placed because we were also rolling through at like 25 miles an hour. And my mistake was like I got half a bottle of Coke or something, but no water. And then I checked my bottles and I'm like, oh man, I'm down to like the last little bits. And it's another 15 miles out to like Waikoloa.
Oh,
And then that's when I was like, not panicking, but I was like, oh shit, I got to slow like way down. So I grabbed multiple bottles through that one. But then the gap opened up and then I had to work hard to close it. Like even, what's his name? Benito Lopez came around me and I was like, okay, cool. I got somebody I can follow. And then his quad started cramping. And I was like,
oh
oh my
shit.
God, you gotta be kidding me.
So the
Like,
gap is even bigger.
well, it just ruined the rhythm a little bit. And I was like, nobody else was really coming around because we were still like kind of going. And I was like, well, whatever. And then, yeah, before we even hit that next aid station, it's like as I could see it, I just started to blow. So I think it was like a combo of just like overworking, like overheating, and just kind of that stuff. I don't, because I really stayed on top of the nutrition for the most part, and so stomach didn't feel bad or anything like that. But yeah, once you kind of start to cook, then everything kind of goes to hell in a handbag.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah, I
run, was
almost
it
had the exact
more?
same thing. The downhill felt
Yeah.
harder than I wanted it to because I was riding with Worf. And it still felt
Yeah.
okay. And then Trevor came by and he was absolutely flying. And it
Mm.
was like, okay, ride with him as long as you can. And then when we got to the bottom of the descent, and then you make the left and you kind of climb up to
Yeah.
Queen K again, he was pushing that uphill, and that's where it started to feel hot because there was no wind because we had a
Yeah.
tailwind there. And I was like, oh no. I got to the Queen K and just blew up completely.
Yeah. Yep.
It's such a line with the because like it didn't feel that hot until it does. It's like it's not hot, and then it's like, oh, I'm kind of hot, and then 5 minutes later you're blown up. Like there's no line, there's no like warning, like there's no oh it's gradually gonna come. It's like you feel it, and then you don't have much time. And I would have had to just let my pride go and be like, let him go now, because you're gonna blow up. But instead, I'm like, well, this is my race, like this is my chance. He's probably riding as fast as the front group. Turned out he was riding faster. He was going to break 4 hours if he didn't crash at the very end of the bike. But obviously, you have a great, a great ability to set your day up with like your swim and being at the front towards all the way down up to Javi. And it's possible that aid station, like those little things with hydration, even if like you weren't dehydrated yet, if it's in your mind a little bit and then you had to slow down a lot at that aid station, the gap's bigger than it would have been, those little things make a huge difference. It's because it's this, like you said, it's surging. It's the surges to catch a group or something that really heat you up. If you just keep the pace kind of like below threshold consistent, that's not going to heat you up as much as a big 400-watt surge to close a gap where
And that's what
your
I
temp's
think
not coming down again.
the first part of the ride was super surgy because we had, the group sorting itself out with the hills. We had Magnus roll through our group. Like there were quite a few surges that, I was feeling good. So I honestly, it was hard, but it didn't feel like it was taking anything out of me, but they probably add up in addition to those longer, kind of Ironman, not Ironman, like in between that Ironman and 70.3 pace where it's, it just takes something out of you. But yeah, we were well over, or I had whatever 15 to 20 or something surges over 400 watts in those early stages, like through town and all of that. So that's, normalized power was super high for like that first half hour to 60 minutes. And then I just kept waiting. I was like, it'll settle down. It never really settled down. And then when it did, I was like, oh, I feel good. And everybody else must be hurting. And then we pushed up Javi and I was like, on the downhill, I'm like, oh, it was like the Arrested Development being like, I've made a huge mistake. Didn't feel like it at the moment. But then I think looking back, that's probably my big mistake because Kona's such a game of just like waiting, just wait. Like play your cards right. Because you could get dealt like the perfect day and feel perfect. But if you play your cards wrong, like you just totally screw over your race so bad.
Yeah. One of the most, I guess, in depth of talent, in my opinion, one of the strongest fields I've seen in forever. And just massive blow ups, massive battles out there.
What?
It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it was I think because looking like even when you looked in 2022, we had a lot of guys who kind of surprised, maybe like laid low, but were super good. But it was still maybe 10 guys that you were like, yeah, these are the players. I was looking at the start list for Kona. I'm like, there's 25 guys that on a good day can be in that top 10. Like it's 25 guys. Like you got Hanson, who's coming from behind, mowing everybody down on the run. You got someone who's just a sleeper, like Gregory Barnaby. Nobody really talked about him that much, but he's had a super solid year with his Ironman performances. And I knew he'd be, somebody solid as well, but it's just tons of people who it's not like, oh, we're talking about, like everybody talks about Magnus and Patrick and the Norwegians and stuff like that, but there wasn't a Norwegian in the top 20 this time. And that's
who was the guy who went?
Linders was a big surprise for most people, probably.
Yeah, he was a big one.
Yeah, he was super solid. He played it super smart, I think. He was in the pack the whole day and just kind of like did his race.
Who was that guy? His name was Nick. He maybe
Thompson or something.
Yeah, Nick Thompson.
Yeah.
He was another guy. I was like, holy shit, where'd he come from? I think he went 9th.
Dude, I read one of his posts. I think earlier this year he like wasn't even qualified and he went out like in Paris or something. He was saying on like a 5-day bender and then raced, some random Ironman. And the guy's like, "Oh, dude, you would be great." I don't know if he's New Zealand or Australian. One of those two.
Australian,
go check out his Instagram post because I was reading, I was like, oh, damn, man. Like you went from just taking it not so seriously to all of a sudden putting yourself in it, qualifying, I think in Western Australia or Cairns or something like that. And then, yeah, he was around in that race for sure.
That was awesome. Well, more Kona. You got more Kona.
No, I was gonna say moving on from Kona.
Yeah.
We kind of alluded at it to start, but you are changing coaches. You had a really great post. So did Jim Vance. He had a great post as well. That seems to be like the ideal way when you kind of end a partnership with a coach. You want to end it that way. I know I've had athletes that have left me. It's always been on good terms. And can you just kind of talk about how you got there? Where you're going?
Well, I think that's a testament to just the coaching relationship that we had. We worked together for 8 years and had a lot of success over on, especially from, early on all the way to 2023 with Roth. And it's kind of been since then that we've just struggled to bring myself back to, racing and feeling like myself. And I think when you work with somebody so long and you had it work, we went through a lot of different scenarios about maybe why results weren't going. And we had a lot of good back and forth, but sometimes you just need a change of stimulus. And we even talked, pretty quickly after Kona and about everything. And I honestly didn't even bring it up first. He brought up, like, I understand if you need a change in stimulus or if you want to try something else. Like, he's always been really good throughout my entire career too, of asking other people who he feels might know a subject better than him to learn from them, apply that to our training. So that's, one of the reasons why I stayed with him for so long, is because he's doesn't have an ego, isn't afraid to ask for help, and is, we had a lot of success together. But I think it's just, for me personally, even, it's it's not you, it's me, like that, the kind of breakup. But it was just kind of like, I just need some sort of change overall, because I think the sport is moving so fast. And whether it's me getting comfortable or just whatever it is, it's just kind of one of those things where it just felt like kind of the right time to make this decision and move on from it, especially after, maybe noticing some patterns throughout some different races where I just feel like I'm coming up short. So we talked about it too, and we agreed it's a risk to stay with him, it's a risk to leave him and try someone new. So but yeah, I mean, I super appreciate all that he's done, his commitment, and just the way we were able to leave it. Like, that's a super hard conversation to have, because he's family to me. Like, we've been together. I've known him and his kids. I knew his kids when they were young, like, overall, and he's known my kids their entire life. And, you can see my wife comment, she hasn't known me without knowing Jim. So he's been around for a long time and been a part of my life for a long time as well. And not an easy decision, but one that I think I need to explore, especially just with how crazy triathlon's getting.
Well, it makes a lot of sense. I think, not that there's anything wrong with being with a coach for a long time, but if there's ever any seed of uncertainty, then you end up looking in the rearview mirror probably a lot more than paying attention to what is going forward. And I think that's just normal, because what did work, or what kind of stimulus has been around that you've loved. So I think that's why I've had probably like 4 or 5 coaches. I appreciate each expertise level, everyone's experiences. No, I've had less.
Come on. At least 5.
4 or 5 this year, right?
No, you bastards. I stick around. Come on. Anyways, I don't remember my point anymore, but we get it. I think it makes sense.
So I have a question. You had, would you say that, like last year, obviously Roth, great performance. The year before, 70.3 Worlds, fantastic performance. This year, would you say you were kind of missing that one day that really like sparked? Because it seems like the last couple years, it's been like mostly solid, the odd not great day, and then a couple really huge, big days. Is that kind of part of what you think? Do you think that was part of the like training style that you and Jim had? Is it like kind of go for it and like maybe you end up overcooked, or maybe you hit it out of the park, or do you think it was something else that kind of had made it so those couple days were just so good? It wasn't really the training necessarily.
Yeah.
It was like whatever else came around that day.
I think, I'm still processing it all and looking through everything, and whoever I end up working with next, I hope can maybe shed some light on some of the stuff that maybe was, or we did well, and maybe some stuff that we weren't doing well. I think that with the last 18 months, like, I think there's been a lot of life stuff too, but I think that there's potentially something that we are just missing out on, where I feel like I'm getting through a lot of these bike rides like 90% of the way, and then, just like losing steam. Like, I haven't felt like I just noticed it after Kona, and we usually hit a world championships super well. We can time a taper. Like last year was more like Roth is what we targeted, and we hit that super well. The year before was St. George, like nailed it. Even the year before that in St. George again, like maybe mistimed that a little bit, but then a few weeks later we hit Oceanside, probably how we wanted to hit St. George. So we always had a good peak. With not hitting maybe a peak like that this year, like kind of targeting San Francisco and Kona. Maybe those were eye openers, and whether that was the coaching style, something we missed in the coaching, just circumstances, how I raced, that's kind of to be determined. But I think that kind of having maybe that pattern of not necessarily feeling like myself was more of a sign that, I mean, frankly, it's just even a stimulus change, like whether like you could call gym system right or wrong, or any other coach's system right or wrong, but sometimes just changing up the system is enough to reboot things. So that's where I feel like this is maybe the last stone kind of I'm turning over as I'm going through and making sure, I got my, strength and mobility down, my massage game, my nutrition down, like all of that sort of stuff, like making sure that all those are in line. It just seems like it's, kind of that right timing. So I don't know if I necessarily answered your question. Like it could be, yeah, I think a lot of different things, but I think just, having somebody else, kind of come in, and see what their kind of training philosophy is, and maybe going, a little bit more just specific scientific and really honing in like that sort of way. That might be more of the answer, but yeah, it's all kind of to be determined, I guess. Like I guess it's pretty fresh at the moment, and it's more of a just knowing that a different stimulus was needed rather than a specific, hey, this is what I feel we did right or wrong.
So coming up next, T100 and also T100 stimulus this year, Ben. It seems like overall that race series with the caliber of really, really high end athletes, always just punishing it. Do you think that that's made an impact on how how you have to prepare now moving forward? Because those races just seem to also just be a whole different talent pool and also stimulus.
Yeah, and I think maybe the thing with me and Jim working so long together too is maybe we might think we know what the stimulus is that's needed for a T100 or the current Ironman or something like that, but maybe that's changed, and maybe we don't know as much as we think. So we feel like we were trying to keep up and we were doing a good job, but we could have been wrong with that too. And we were just dealing with the information that we had. So that's maybe why, going off and trying to find somebody else who has other information will be helpful. And the T100, I mean, hard to say, man. I haven't really raced that well at a T100 in period to really give that much info, but it is, I will say that the racing overall, just whether you're T100, 70.3, Ironman, the way Roth looked, like all these races, there's just a more intensity to them. And there's more, I guess, dynamics. There's more of a range. It's not so much a race your own race necessarily. And if you do race your own race, I'd say usually the case is you're either off the front or you're trying to get to the front. And those people do seem to do fairly well when they're able to focus in and do that. But that's a huge, I think, risk that you could potentially be taking because, as we were just talking about earlier in the podcast, the pack moves so fast. Yeah. You have to be 100% sure that your total package of aerodynamics and power and everything is faster than the fastest couple guys in that other pack to be able to beat them out, or that whatever you're riding, then you can run and be able to close that gap. So it's a really interesting game because I think we're just seeing triathlon advance at a pace that we haven't seen before, because all these people are just questioning what are the race dynamics, finding weaknesses in it, changing the game, and then it happens all over again the next race. We hardly see a race that plays out exactly the same. Like it's always this reshuffling of guys who win and guys who are pushing the pace or mixing it up,
or finding like little loopholes and what they can place where on their bike. I mean, that's been the biggest change this last 12 to 15 months.
It's an arms race.
You've got to be on top of it. Like, yeah, there's even guys at Kona I heard about. Like, I would have freaking done this if I knew about it. There was this like bar tape that cools you down Did you know
Yeah.
about this, Ben?
I
Did you
used
use it?
some, oh, I used some clothing that looked like it was similar to that overall. And that's what I tried to think about some of that stuff with my team. But it's also, you know, you can only focus on so much at one time. And we were trying to
Yeah.
adjust my position to be more competitive, to push more power and be able to breathe better and all of that and still be fast versus these guys. Like, I don't know how much they're going to the wind tunnel or if they use the body rocket stuff or what it is, but they also seem to have a team of either their bike company, aerodynamicists or something. Cause I mean, I don't know if you heard about the Magnus foil thing, but he had a rear thing that like went through the through axle in the back and it was a hydration system, but it also was going to save him somewhere between like 25 and 35 watts. Like just an insane amount. Like it's
Oh,
just
it
all
probably
of these.
just elongated the back of his bike to just bring all that air along like an airfoil.
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like this like weird like rectangle. I don't know exactly what it was, but I was talking to somebody who seemed to know or see it. And I mean, yeah, just the bottle placements of Gustav and Patrick Lang and just all of those guys who just moved it way farther back. Like I'm curious to see
Yeah.
too, does the governing bodies of this, do they just make things standardized or do we keep allowing people and to basically 3D print whatever you want to stick on your bike as long as it looks legit, it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's getting crazy to the point of like, yeah, if you have a Magnus team that can design something with an engineering lab to like do some great, and they didn't allow it, which I think is probably the right choice, but
Yeah, that's
it's like,
significant. Like it's one thing if you're
yeah,
talking
that's
5 watts here or there. It's another thing if you're talking, 15, 20, 25 of something you're adding onto the bike. It seems like if
yeah,
we're going that way, it's starting to be like, okay, like where's the line in the sand? Because when they had like the bottle going down the jersey, I'm just like, that's such a tiny savings overall. Like
yeah,
I think when I was in the wind tunnel, I put the Camelback down my jersey and it saved me a few watts and it would have been
yeah,
nice for cooling. But, anybody can copy that. It's like when you get these crazy bottle setups where like I tried to even find for the front end just to play around with like a double bottle setup. It's so hard to find a piece to put a double
yeah.
bottle setup on the front between your arms that isn't
You,
fully custom. There's
You have
hardly
to
any
have a 3D
budget.
printer, buddy. Like that's the only
yeah,
way to really do it well these days.
And if we're talking
yeah,
about
we
like
have,
fairness of like arms race, it's like some of these guys could spend tons of money or their team spends tons of money to be able to do that.
yeah, exactly. And I think I've heard Iron Man is like restricting the rules again a little bit more this coming year with bottles and stuff. So before you go do any more wind tunnel testing, maybe wait till January if you're going to test bottles. That's what
Right.
I'm waiting because they're going to bring the rules out in January, and then you're like, okay, here's the rules. But I think it's going to be simple, like the bottle, like a bottle in the front of the like has to sit within your elbows or something like that. Like it can't
Yeah,
be like Gustav's was behind his elbows.
it'll start to move
Uh,
towards like UCI rules just to like keep crazy stuff from happening constantly.
I think the best
yeah,
part
Yeah,
though is right now, like the refs are checking most of everybody's setup for sturdiness. Like they're trying to make sure no matter what, it's not just going to fall apart during the race.
Well, and I think for the pros, like that's not necessarily an issue. It's more like I guess if we're talking about if you want a relatively even playing field, because when you start getting like, I guess I was a little bit naive in the fact too of thinking, okay, you can get your position, like you do the basic stuff, like you get your body aerodynamic, and that'll be good. But now when you're taking the hydration systems and essentially making foils, and you're able to 3D print a bottle that is going to make your bike double digits faster, like
Yeah.
that's where I start to feel like, okay, now it's starting to be like F1, but we don't have unlimited budgets or we don't have a budget cap that people are playing by. And I'm rolling this into a different topic, but then it's like, for people who are trying to break into the sport, like how are they able to compete with that with somebody of like, let's just say a Magnus or a Sam Laidlaw who seem to have really good like aerodynamicist engineers on their team, and you're, riding a
Bro,
stock
that's
bike.
why there's Formula 2 and Formula 3.
Well, then I'm like, well, now I'm going on to the question of how about the issues just getting onto a start list like
Yeah.
for Ironman, like for established pros. Like
I think we all
I
have to
saw
sign
Matt
up a year in
McElroy's.
advance.
Well, yeah, I know, but don't say that because then it's going to be full and everybody's just going to hold their spot. Like essentially right now, the issue is it's what ITU ran into when governing bodies did that. You can sign up for every single race and pay the money to have the license for the full year and you can block everybody else out. And that's like that just seems like totally absurd to me. And like Indian Wells is full. Who's going? Who are these people who are going? That's not to me like mean to anybody. That's like I don't know who you are. I don't realize how many pros are willing to travel to Indian Wells when there's a world champs the weekend after because that's already full too. And there's at least 50 to 60 guys or so going to New Zealand to race. And then in addition, the weekend before, we probably have another like Ironman is pretty good about letting a lot of pros in. There's probably 60 to 80 guys on that Indian Wells list with a wait list that's probably about 20 people long.
It's crazy.
Yeah, the scale of what's going to happen in the next few years with pro racing, it's got to adapt to these fields because you can't fit that many men on a pontoon or between two docks anymore. Expect us to survive. It's going to be
because I'm torn about it. It's one, is it an issue with giving people pro cards? Because maybe it's not Ironman's issue. Maybe it's a problem with the governing bodies handing out pro cards. Because I want to advance our sport and allow people, who are coming out, who are wanting to make the jump, have some, beginner races that they can go to, like in Indian Wells, and go do well at or like get the experience. But you also need people who have been on the circuit for a number of years, who this is their full-time job. Like you need the opportunity to be able to race and, make a living on like you can't, we're not racing, we're just influencers then. And that's not what we signed up for. That's part of the job, but like we want to race.
I think the big issue with the long course racing is that there is no development track. So you start and you're immediately racing. You can be racing 10 of the top 100 guys in a race. Where if you look at Formula One, for example, there's go-karting into Formula 3, into Formula 2, into Formula 1. It's like a funnel or short course. You have, it used to be Continental Cups, World Series, and now they even have development races where like only developing nations can race before you have Continental Cups, and it funnels guys down where we just don't have that. Our funnel track is literally any race, any Ironman race, any challenge race to Worlds. That is the funnel.
Many countries, you can just sign up for a race or sign up for a pro license. You just take like Canada. You guys can just get an EKG and be safe.
I was gonna say they need to check that your heart is beating first.
Yeah, well, that's like, Mark Dubrick and I had a conversation about this once. But we looked up. There's like a few hundred pros for triathlon or something in the U.S. alone. That's just like, yeah, there's a lot. Like if you look, you can Google how many there are, and I don't have it pulled up right now. But from what I remember, it was kind of a shocking amount. But it's just like, these Indian Wells, like Augusta is that was supposed to be that's like a beginner rate. They do it based on prize money. It's just not labeled as developmental race. Like most top guys, some will go to Augusta because it's convenient and looking for a race, but most top guys won't go. It's a lighter start list versus a pro series race. Now that they have like an Oceanside and St. George. But yeah, I'm just shocked at just the amount, I guess, of people who are all doing this. And I'm just wondering as we go in and people, like, I guess maybe I shouldn't be talking about it on the podcast, but how they plan their seasons and when they sign up for races and everything. Like, is it just going to be a race to hit submit? Like I guess like it used to be an age group race, but it's just that just you're missing out. Like, wasn't there a story of Alistair Brownlee, or a rumor of him wanting to race in Texas, and the start list was full, so he was within the deadline,
wanted to as well and couldn't.
Yeah, so it's one of those things. Like we all laugh at Cam Moore for being on every start list, but maybe he's onto something. And that's also when you're that
he's
far
part of the problem.
But that's another, like, that is part of the problem too, because he, like, either forgets that he's in them or just, doesn't think about it or whatever. He's not being malicious. He just wants to have options.
Yeah.
But it's starting to be to a point where it's like, okay, if all of the pros do that, then we're going to end up with half the field sometimes because people, pull off last minute or you're just waiting there and you're like, okay, I guess
No,
I
it's
booked
going to
my
be a
flights.
lottery. We all have to sign up 3 months out. And then at that time, they push a button and it just randomizes who gets in. Boom.
Yeah. I mean,
I
T100
don't know why
is
there's
doing,
just like there doesn't. I don't think it has to be like a communist approach of everyone has equal chance. Like I really don't think a brand new pro would object if it's like before you get into a pro series race, you have to finish within 10% of the winner in any other Ironman race or something like that. As
I think
long as
that
they had
makes
races
legit
available.
sense.
And
Yeah.
like there's a lot of guys who would never get within 10% of the winner, even in a smaller race. And then because that's like 24 minutes or whatever, 20 minutes and a half. Like that's not super easy, but you're not going to contend in the pro series. Like maybe even go 12%, whatever, just whatever the number is.
yeah.
And
There's probably
then
somebody who could crunch those numbers where it'd be like, yeah, all the pro series races would have been cut by 25% or 30% if we put this certain percentage in there. But
Or
yeah,
no
'cause
first
that's,
timers.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that I'm interested to see because we have a lot of opportunity right now, but there's also sometimes bars to entry. Like the T100 is going to be tough to get into. I don't know if they're keeping their 20 athletes, if they're happy with that, if they want to expand to more, but that's a commitment to race that series versus, the pro series. Like if you want to go all in on it, that's also a commitment, but there's no requirements there. But if all those races fill up and you don't make the T100, then you're kind of sitting there going, okay, like what races can I do?
Challenge championship.
Yeah. I mean, challenge is great too. But it's hard for, if you're a new
Travel.
pro to get out to travel because there's
Yeah,
not as many
well,
North American pros or pro
Challenge had a race in Montreal. They had to cancel the pro race because they only had 3 guys sign up.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe that's a prize purse or an advertising thing. It's harder to maybe see that, but yeah, I don't know. And that's just where it's that's where a lot of those guys should be going to like cut your teeth at it because challenge is a great series, honestly. Like I love challenge races, but yeah, I was just thinking about that, about the whole because I saw how full Indian Wells was, and that was just like, dang, like end of season race, same time as Worlds, and who's going? I'll be
Well,
interested to
I
see the
think
start list.
another thing too with regards to Indian Wells and Oceanside is that Indian Wells is the last race of the year, so everyone who gets their pro card this year wants to jump into that race, and then Oceanside is the first race of the year. Everyone who qualified again, they want to get their first race, and they all go to Oceanside. And it seems like those are the really popular races. And racing does tend to die down like August, September time. It starts to get really quiet, and then it picks back up again.
Well, it's also just the distribution in the calendar too. Like I found it hard this year to find a race to do in the middle of the year that was in North America or even toward the end of the year even. Like it's just we were so front loaded in North America this year versus the back half of the year. So yeah, that's been interesting as well because it's always shifting.
Well, one thing we can plan on for every single year, no matter what, is some new bullshit, some crazy changes, and the unpredictability of who is actually in charge of our sport. Of rule, did Race Ranger work it in Kona?
I would say 90% of the time it was like maybe 95 even. It was super helpful. There were a few instances where maybe the red light was obviously on for too long, like as somebody passed and you would drop back and it would just like wouldn't go. And you're like, I know I'm like 15 meters or so back. Like I've been dropping back and then you stay like you keep messing around and then it just switches like to off because you're outside the draft zone. So there's still, I think, a few quirks. I would say that's probably one of the best races I've used it in so far. And I like the adaptation of it seems like all the series are going to, if the light turns red, you have to pass. Yeah, there's like no question because you're in the draft zone. That's by the rules. Versus when it first came out, it's kind of like, oh, well, you can go in and out a little bit to find the draft zone. And now it's like, yeah, no, just if it's red, you're out. Like you had your warning. And I think that's really helped clean up the ambiguity that is in some of it. And it's helped people ride fair. I think it's probably added to some of the, spikes in the pack, having to come up and, figure out, okay, do I want to sit blue, yellow, and oh crap, now it's red. Now I have to go hammer to pass, 3 guys. But I do think that it's helped the fairness of the draft zone a lot more. Now, if we talk about how big the draft zone should be, that's probably a whole different debate.
Well, speaking of a whole different debate, we need to save all that for next time we debate.
Yeah,
because it's getting a little bit long. I know Jackson and Garrick are 2 hours. What time? 10 o'clock. Look at you boys. Proud of you. Staying up late.
Nice
Didn't
job
eat
with
dinner.
that. Good luck at the grand
even
final.
later because it was
What's it called?
daylight savings, or we fell back.
Daylight losings, technically.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that is. We don't do that here in Arizona.
Oh, I wish we didn't.
Look at
I
him.
think everybody would do away with it.
I think
Yeah.
I've talked to everybody every time, anytime, and they all hate it. Like I've never met some person who's like, yeah, that I really look forward to the falling back and slipping ahead. It makes my life wonderful.
Yeah.
All I know is I showed up to work today. It was dark, and I left work, and it was dark.
Michigan.
So it helped.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Ben,
boys,
thanks so much for coming on and talking about Kona and obviously the very important relationship between you and Jim. Obviously, being with Jim for a year myself, I really love the guy, and I know he's never leaving the sport or going to probably not call you and talk to you all the time. He's such a good guy.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
So I'm really stoked too. I've gotten to know him too. But beyond that, boys, Garrick and Jax, thanks for coming on. Ben, you the man, and we'll see you at T100. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Appreciate having me
Yeah.
on.
Good luck, man. Good luck,
Thanks.
dude.